Hello, brothers and sisters. Brother Trey here again for another Bible study. I'm uploading now. That's not a Bible study. Probably should pay attention to it. This is not that, but this is a Bible study. We left off in chapter 30 where Joseph was increasing Rachel, or having many children through Rachel and Leah, and since they became unable to bear, they gave their handmaidens to him to wife, so he had more children through there. So now he has 4 wives, technically 2 wives and 2 concubines, and then he has many sons and 1 daughter now. Then he asked Laban to leave, and but Laban has seen the blessings that Jacob has been on his life, and he has seen the favor of the Lord upon his life. For the sake of Jacob, his flock multiplies, he is increased. And then when he tries to leave, he tries to pay him with goats. So he sets apart goats for himself, and the stronger flock ended up being Jacob's, and the weaker is Laban's. And then Jacob increased exceedingly from there. So on to 31, shall we? And it reads, hold on one second. Okay. And it reads, he hears the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob had taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. So they believe that Jacob is stealing from Laban because he's increasing exceedingly and has gotten much increase. I don't know if they knew about the agreement that Laban and Jacob have had. But anyway, and Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, behold, it was not toward him as before. So his countenance, his face, his opinion of him towards Jacob was not the same, because the sons had told Laban of what was going on, apparently, so because of what they said. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So the Lord is telling Jacob to leave. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field of his flock. So he called unto his wives to come into the field, so he could speak with them. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, and that it is not toward me as before. Not toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with us. So he said, telling his wives that their father's opinion of me, how he thinks of me, has changed. He doesn't look at me the same anymore. And he said, you know that all my power, that with all my power I have served your father. So with all of his ability, all of his talents, he has served his father, or their father. And your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. So he clearly sees that that Laban has been deceiving him. So he's clearly telling his wives what their father's been doing. He said, but God didn't let him hurt me. So, and he said thus, if he said thus, the speckle shall be thy wages, then all the cattle shall bear speckle. And if he said thus, the ringstake shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstake. So if he said that all the wages be the speckled, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if all the said thus, the ringstake shall be thy hire, then all the cattle bring ringstake. So either way, it would be his hire, right? Because that was the promise. Thus God had taken away the cattle of your father and given unto me. So God gave me these cattle. And it came to pass at that time the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and I saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ringstake, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up thine eyes and see. All the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstraked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. And I am God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me, arise, get thee out from this land, and return into the land of the kindred. So the Lord said he's blessing him. He said he's seen everything that Laban has done to him, so he has increased Jacob for Laban's wrongdoing. So he says, where you vowed the vow, and he says, he's telling him now to get out of this land, and return to the land of thy kindred. Right? So it's not the same as before. So he's telling him to go back to the land of thy kindred. So it's basically saying it's safe to go back. But he's not directly saying that his brother Esau is no longer mad at him. Right? No longer wants to kill him. So anyway, and Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So is there an inheritance for them in their father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers, for he has sold us and quite devoured also our money? So is his view of them not considered changed as well? For he has sold us and quite devoured our money also. So taken from them as well. For all the riches which God had taken from our father, that is ours, and our children now, then whatsoever God has said unto thee. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. So all the cattle was going to go with him. He's packing up to leave. He's packing up his sons and his wives upon camels. And then he was going to take the cattle with him that he had gotten in Paddan Aram, that he had set aside for himself. And he was going to take it into the land of his father of Canaan. And Laban went to shear sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. So she had stolen the images of the god of the land of her father. I don't know if she planned on worshiping it or not. So Laban went to shear sheep. And so when Laban went to shear sheep, she snuck away the images or the idol of her father. So when he was gone, she had taken it. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, and that he told him not that he fled. So when Laban went to go shear, he left. So when he was away, so he couldn't stop him, he left while he was busy. So he fled with all that he had, and rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. So they left and went this way, toward Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled. So 3 days lead, Laban was told that Jacob left. So it must have been a long while he was shearing sheep out in the field or something. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. So the 7 days' journey, he finally overtook him and met him where he was at in Mount Gilead. So I think they probably was resting in Mount Gilead, and that's how they found him. And then God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And then Laban overtook Jacob, so he told him not to tell him. So God met Laban in a dream, don't speak to him either good or bad. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, so they had stopped. And Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Mount Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? So why have you left and stolen away unawares my daughters as captives, like captives of war, have to get taken with the sword? So that was part of wartime, is taking away the women and children in wartime. Was the way it was done back then. That was part of their spoils of war. So why did you do it like you were taking spoils of war? He said, wherefore did thou flee away? Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me, and did not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with songs and with tabrets and with the heart, like said, sent thee away with a feast and with a celebration before you left? And has not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters, and that thou hast done foolishly in doing so. So he said, why didn't you allow me to kiss my grandsons and my granddaughters, or his grandsons and granddaughter, and his daughters, to say goodbye, and you have done foolishly in doing so. So it is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesterday, take thou heed that thou speak to not to Jacob either good or bad. So is it in his power to do him hurt, but the Lord told him not to do it. So therefore he must have been fearful of the Lord, because he told him in a dream not to do it. And now that though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore thou hast stolen my gods. So he says, I'm not sure exactly, but I know at the last part he said, why have you stolen my gods? In which we know Rachel had taken the images, when he said, as said in verse 19. Moving on. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wast taken by force thy daughters from me. So because he thought he was going to take. So he snuck away because he thought he was going to take the daughters from him. With whomsoever thou findest thy God, let him not live before our brethren discern that what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew that Rachel had stolen them. So he said, whoever took it, let him not live. But he didn't know Rachel had taken it from him. And Laban went to Jacob's tent and to Leah's tent and to other maid servants' tents, and didn't find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them, and Laban searched all the tent but found them not. So she hid it in the camel's furniture, that which she was sitting on. They were traveling by camel, so she was sitting on it. So Laban searched all the tent and found them not. She said unto her father, let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched but found not the images. She sat on it, and she said the custom of women is upon him, meaning that she was telling her father that she was in the middle of her menstrual cycle, and that basically it hadn't come to pass yet, but that was just like it was unclean on that part, because it was gross and she was indisposed, possibly maybe under covering, saying that she cannot get up because she was on her menstrual cycle, and her cycle was flowing. So I don't know how they handled it back then, but it was probably pretty unsanitary at this point. So continuing on. So Laban searched the tent, but he found it not. And of course, we know it was under Rachel in the camel's furniture. And she said, cannot rise up, for the custom was upon me. And he searched and found not the images, because it was underneath her. And Jacob was wroth, angry, and showed with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What have I done? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? And he said, and whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, and what hast thou found of thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge between both of you. So set it between everybody as witness so they can judge between me and you. This 20 years have I been with thee, thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. So I haven't done anything, haven't taken anything from you in these 20 years. Now that which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bore the loss of it. Of my hand did thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. So the drought consumed me. So he was thirsty. And then the frost by night, and he had double frost by night, so he was cold, and my sleep departed from my eyes. So he was restless. And thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 7 times. So he's telling him how he's deceived him and tried to deceived him. He said, I worked hard for you, but yet you tried to deceive me, changing my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac have been with me. Surely thou hast sent me away now empty. God had seen mine affliction and labor of my hands and rebuked thee yesterday. So the Lord has seen his affliction. So he's telling him the Lord saw his affliction and he rebuked him. I was trying to correct him. Said, don't tell him bad or good. Says he was trying to send him away now empty. So he believed he was trying to take everything back away, his children and his wives away from him, and the cattle that was with him, saying basically to take all that he had brought away from Padan Aram, which was truly Jacob's, because he was worthy of his hire, he was worthy of the cattle that he had raised, worthy of the wives that he was given, worthy of the children that they had bare unto him. But he believed that Laban was trying to take it all back away. And then he was trying to see him and try to steal it from him. What that was clearly his. So he told him, the Lord has seen his affliction and labor of my hands. Labor for seeing his affliction and labor of his hands, and he rebuked Laban in a dream. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these are my daughters, and these children are my children. These cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, and unto their children which they have borne? So they're saying everything was his, and indeed partially they were his, but he had given them to Jacob. So they were in possession of Jacob. Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and be a witness for between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up before a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather the stones. And they took stones, made it a heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. So they made a covenant into it and set up a pillar. And Laban called it Jegar Sahardutha, but Laban called it that, and then but Jacob called it Gilead. So they set a place of their covenant, set a pillar as a remembrance for that. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore, the name of it is called Gilead. So this is a symbol of our witness of the covenant made between them at that point. So, in remembrance of the covenant made between Laban and Jacob. And Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch me and thee, when we are absent one from another. And thou shalt afflict my daughters. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness between me and you. So, if one is not with the other one, the Lord shall be a witness between the two of them, and he shall see if Jacob shall afflict his daughters, mistreat them, or if thou shalt take other wives besides his daughters, no man is with us, but God sees. So God shall be a witness. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar will I cast between me and you. And this heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that God Lord is present, that I will not pass over the heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over the heap, and this pillar unto me for harm. So he won't come back after him for harm to get back his daughters, his grandchildren, his cattle that he believes are his, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So he swore by his own father and by the Lord. And then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread and stayed all night in the mount. So they made a sacrifice and they ate bread after coming. So they sacrificed unto the Lord. So the Lord would bless the covenant. And then and called his brethren to eat bread, and they stayed all night. And early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. So, they made a covenant. He had caught up with him, but the Lord told him not to do him harm or tell him bad or good. So they had a confrontation, but ended up making a covenant, making peace, finally, and making peace and making a covenant, and making a promise, so they won't come back after each other. They'll remain peace. They won't try to do each other harm anymore. And the pillar was like basically a point where it said they won't go past it to try to come against each other. So basically, I think Jacob was trying to say, "I'll no longer come back," and it's also a point of remembrance, saying that I won't, that God be a judge between the two of them. And they made a covenant, and they broke bread, and they made a sacrifice to the Lord. So they basically gave the Lord a portion with the sacrifice, and they broke bread and in celebration of it. They ate bread peacefully, and they stayed all night together. And Laban rose and departed and turned into his own place. So that is kind of what, well, it's kind of a long drawn out version of that, of what marriage is like. That parents give away their daughters, technically in marriage. A father gives his daughter to another man to be his wife. I mean, technically, she's still his blood. She's still his daughter, but she now belongs to the new husband. And nowadays, she would take his last name. She would have a new last name because she now belongs to him. She's now Mrs. Whatever his last name is. So she would belong to him. He and the father would give a dowry or whatever, and it's kind of like payment for taking his daughter or something, like a blessing. But the father gives away, and even in the marriage ceremony, the father is supposed to give away the daughter, right? So he's giving his daughter to the new husband. So, but this is like it was a kind of a dowry he had multiple daughters in this, and then he had grandchildren. He believed were his, and then the cattle, and like it was a wages for his hire. So it was all his. It was all Jacob's. So, but then, think about it. Marriage is a covenant between two families, saying we won't come after you. We won't do each other hurt. We're making a exchange. We're making a promise that we won't do each other hurt. It'd be a exchange of peace. We're connecting two families. The husband and wife, the son and the daughter becoming one, becoming their own. She becomes one with him to be part of his family. But in all, they are making a covenant, a marriage covenant, which is sacred before God, because God is, when their marriage happens, it's a sacred covenant, and God is a witness of it, And if we do it in a church setting, then God not only the two families, but God is a witness between the two families, saying they are making a marriage covenant between the two families. I think people have stopped thinking of it that way, that it's two families making a covenant. And covenants, we don't want to break. Marriage is a covenant that God doesn't want broken. So he's a witness of it, saying this is what happens between God is a witness between the husband's family and the wife's family, and that they are willing to let go to the bride's family is willing to give their daughter to the husband, this groom, and they're willing to make an agreement, an agreement of peace, an agreement of, that's why a father's blessing is important, that he's willing to give. He has a blessing that he believes that the man is suitable for his daughter. Like, that gives the go ahead, gives them a green light, saying, hey, yeah, I will give my wife, or give my daughter to you, because I believe you are a good man. I believe, I don't know if he would go through a trial period, or he would work for him somehow, or I don't know. That's not always the case when it comes to like it happened with Jacob. Jacob ended up working for a hire, working for 7 years for the first daughter, 7 years for the second daughter, and 6 years for the cattle. He was worthy of his hire, so it was given to him, but doesn't happen nowadays. But that's why it's also important for a man and a woman to court or date or whatever you want to call it, to get to know each other. She thinks he's worthy, then the father needs to get to know him too, whether he thinks he's worthy to marry his daughter. Getting to know the parents after a time, if she thinks that he is worthy. I might admit my in-laws might not think I was worthy at the beginning, but they've gotten to know me and how I'm following God. So do I know if they still want to believe that I'm still worthy to be married to their daughter? I don't know, but God thought I was worthy to have her. So it worked out. So we've been together 10 years, and then married for 9. So we've been blessed thus far. Were they a little discontent about us moving to South Carolina? Yeah, they didn't like it, but they know the Lord is leading us. So He's blessed us while we're here. So, but that is it. A marriage is a covenant, and then. And indeed, for the covenant to happen, your grandchildren are brought forth, and they belong to each family, because it's the bloodline of the wife that's more have come up of, and then the more of the seed of the husband that comes from his family. So that's more. They are part of both families. So it's a covenant. They kind of belong to both sides, but you don't need to argue of it. You don't need to try to take them away from each other. But be peaceful about it. It's a holy covenant, and they treated us such. Treated it special, rather than being at odds with each other and hating one another. We always have. They always talk about negatively about in-laws. And that's not the way it should be. They should have peace between them. And it's also for the sake of their own children that they agreed to have to give to each other in holy matrimony, and then also for the sake of the grandchildren that those two, the son and daughter, have. that they have in the relationship. They have children, which adds on to both families, and both families are blessed through the holy matrimony because they've had children. So it's a blessing. And then I guess whatever blessings they accrue, as far as I don't know how the cattle would come into that, but they can they are blessed through the covenant, through them being together. So both sides can be blessed, not those through their grandchildren, but I guess they could be blessed in other ways if them together they end up being successful, and the Lord blesses it and they multiply, as far as they can be able to. The Lord gives us power to create wealth. So if they become wealthy, then they can indeed, I guess they can also indeed bless their family. So that was some main part of it, is that they can also bless the families financially or somehow, as the Lord multiplies them, not with just children, but with other ways as well. So they can bless both families through the covenant. So just thinking of that, it's a marriage covenant. It's better not to go against it's better for our in-laws not to go against each other, not son-in-law, not daughter-in-law, going against the parents, or vice versa. It's just better to have a peaceful covenant, which God has blessed, which God is judged between the two families. So God's still watching over the families even after the marriage ceremony. People forget that God is still watching. God has blessed it. God has joined it. No, man and woman. I'm saying one man and woman. When there's only two genders. He has blessed the marriage between man and woman, not man and man, not woman and woman, not transgender or gender confused. He hasn't blessed those marriages. It's just man and woman that he's blessed the marriage of, because that's how he created it. That's how he instituted it. That's how he started it with Adam and Eve. Man and woman. So I might get some flack for it, but God blessed man and woman. So this is a holy covenant, not with just the two, but with the two families. Adam and Eve didn't have to deal with that, but God created them so that would happen, and they didn't have. But their family came after, because Cain and Abel, and then Seth, and then all the rest of the children. And then their children had children, so they were blessed to them. But we still have in-laws, a father and mother that created that child, either the son or the daughter, and they have to, say, there's even a question in the marriage ceremony, who gives this away? And they say, who gives away this woman to be his bride? And they say, we do. That's verbal agreement, saying we give her away. So before you say those words, think about that. Do you really want it to happen? Did you really bless the marriage before the wedding day? Were you really willing to give her away? Do you think he is suitable for your daughter? Now, the father's family, they might say, well, they don't really say much. I mean, that's the wife that he chose to have. Now, we know Jacob didn't choose Leah, but the father gave Leah, tricked him, deceived him. But marriage is sacred, and it's conjoining of not just two become one, but two families really become one through the marriage. Like, I know my mother and father, I know their families have. My father was friends with my father was a friend with one of my mother's brothers, or one or two of them knew him before he knew my mom, and they were friends, and they were hanging out, and he met my mom, and they were still friends afterwards. So he occasionally still talk to him. I mean, they weren't close friends afterward, but then they knew they were in-laws, so they would still talk and talk civilly, and he would talk to my grandparents and my mom's parents, and then my mom is still connected to my dad's family, even though my father has passed away. She still talks to him, still talks civilly, and she doesn't hate him. But I just still think that it should be still be civil with one another through it all. So sorry about that. My dogs are barking at something. They are pretty anxious. So anyway, I hope you've learned something out of this. That marriage is sacred, and that it's a covenant between not just two entities, not just man and woman, but two families, and it should be a covenant of peace and not to harm, and should be a great blessing to both families, even through the two conjoining and through the children that are coming, and then through many, many blessings that might come afterwards. So I hope this has blessed you, and hope you learned something, and be blessed in Jesus' name.